The 911 dispatch center in Fredericksburg, Virginia is now under investigation by its own police department after a 7 on Your Side investigation found a man recently died after calling 911 and no one there responded.
So the man's family reached out to our I-team asking for help, and government watchdog investigator Chris Papst unraveled what happened.
My dad was a very simple man.
For Michael Paulus, this was a day he knew was coming.
Like a keepsake box. He had my grandmother's obituary in here.
When his father, Robert, was diagnosed with heart disease, their time ran short.
I was lucky I got 28 years with him.
Paulus died in late April here at his Fredericksburg City apartment. And even though his family knew he was ill, it was still obviously very devastating, especially after they learned what happened just hours before his passing, when he used this phone to make the last call of his life. It was to 911.
There was one final cry for help, and nobody responded.
To find out why nobody responded, Paulus reached out to 7 on Your Side.
I might have been able to see my dad one more time. I might have actually be able to say goodbye, you know, and at least know he didn't die alone either. That's the thing that kills me.
So we started digging. According to Paulus's iPhone, the 911 call was made at 11:46 at night on April 23rd.
Thank you for calling AT&T. My name is Sarah, and how may I help you?
AT&T confirmed the call. Now we had to find it. We first contacted Fredericksburg City Dispatch, which should have received the call, but there is no record of it. The next closest call centers in Stafford and Spotsylvania counties didn't have it either. We expanded our search to include 7 more area call centers, and nothing. We spoke to Apple, area hospitals, and local 911 experts looking for leads. Again, nothing. We were just about ready to call the family and apologize for failing to help. But then
we did find the call.
Fredericksburg City, the first place we contacted, found the call. Here it is.
Fredericksburg 911, where's your emergency? Hello?
During the 18-second call, the dispatcher tried 3 times to make contact with Paulus. After hearing nothing except this sound, the call was labeled a pocket dial or butt call, where no callback is required. Hours later, Paulus was found dead. Could this be seen as a failure in the 911 system?
I think that this was an oversight, and I think that the police department is taking this very seriously by opening an internal investigation.
An investigation that could change policy. 911 protocol is not centralized. Every call center is different. Had Paulus dialed 911 in Fairfax County, for example, the dispatcher would have called back.
If I hadn't called 7 on Your Side, you know, I would have still been waiting for answers and being pushed off. If you're in some kind of a medical situation where you can't respond, that's not a butt dial. That's a cry for help.
Paulus will never know if a callback would have prolonged his father's life and given him a chance to say goodbye.
I'm glad I know the truth now, but it still makes me very angry that there's nothing in place to help him. I want things to change. I think policies need to be changed.
Chris Papst, ABC 7 News.
Now, ABC 7 News at 4 on Your Side.
There was one final cry for help, and nobody responded.
It is the I-team investigation that led Fredericksburg Police to launch its own investigation into the city's 911 dispatch center.
Well, now 7 on Your Side's Chris Papst is going even further, asking this question. If you called 911 and for some reason you couldn't talk to the dispatcher, would help be sent to you?
So we found out that the answer really depends on where you live.
Oh, his Bible. He actually was a very faithful man.
It's now been a few months since Michael Paulus lost his father. And how he died is not getting any easier.
We paid the taxes for this service, and it fails us.
Late in the night on April 23rd, 56-year-old Robert Paulus called 911 from his Fredericksburg apartment.
Fredericksburg 911, where's your emergency? Hello?
After hearing nothing on the other end, the dispatcher labeled the call a pocket call or butt dial. Following Fredericksburg policy, there was no callback and no help was sent. A few hours later, Paulus was found dead.
I was so angry just to think that it's just a butt dial. I mean, how many other people has this happened to? You know, where something serious is happening and it's just a butt dial.
The I-team wondered the same thing and found in our area This is rare. We contacted every dispatch center in the Metro DMA and found all of them, except Fredericksburg, will call back or dispatch a crew if someone calls 911 and nothing is heard.
Other than this story in Fredericksburg, you probably didn't get up in the morning thinking about 911. Most people don't. They expect it to be there.
Every year, 240 million 911 calls are made nationally, most from cell phones. Brian Fonts is with the National Emergency Number Association, based in Alexandria. His group recommends standards for dispatch centers around the country, and the butt call standard is clear.
The recommended policy would be that you call back if you hear nothing at the other end of the call to determine whether or not this is a butt call to the best of your ability.
But the standards recommended by Nina are just that, recommendations. Each dispatch center, including Fredericksburg, sets its own policy.
Do you think this was a failure of the 911 system?
Yes, a large failure. There should be a lot more standards in place, and it should be universal for everybody.
Now, as we mentioned, following the I-Team's initial investigation into Paulus' death, Fredericksburg police launched an internal investigation which is still ongoing, and we have learned it does include a review of Fredericksburg Dispatch's butt call policy.
And that leaves you to wonder, would this man still be alive had they called him back?
Had he made that call in any other jurisdiction except Fredericksburg, there would have been a call back. And it does ask the question, would he have made it?
But doesn't it make sense if you're going to call 911 an emergency? A lot of folks are having some sort of medical ailment. Maybe they're choking. They can't talk. They won't make a sound.
Or if somebody breaks into your house and you don't want to say anything because you don't want to give away your location. I think that is why Nina, who we mentioned in the story, has their policy that they're supposed to call back or send a crew, and every dispatch center in our area would do that except for one. With that internal investigation, we'll see what happens with that, and that could change soon.
Let's hope it does. Chris, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Fredericksburg Dispatch stands alone no more. After a series of 7 on your side I-Team investigations, Fredericksburg Dispatch changed its 911 policy concerning pocket dials or butt calls. Government watchdog investigator Chris Papst broke this story last month, and he has this important update.
Fredericksburg Dispatch didn't just change its policy, it did a complete 180. Before 7 on Your Side started investigating, calls labeled butt dials were simply dismissed. Now dispatchers will not only call that number back, they will also send an emergency crew.
Fredericksburg 911, where's your emergency? Hello?
That is the 911 call that changed Michael Paulus's life.
Next month, we will be sending my father's ashes into the Chesapeake Bay. So that's the final goodbye.
It's also a call that led to a 7 on Your Side investigation and a change in policy at Fredericksburg City Dispatch.
Do you regret how you got to this change?
I'm not going to answer that question.
Late in the evening on April 26th, 56-year-old Robert Paulus, who had heart disease, called 911. When the dispatcher answered, she heard nothing on the other end except this sound and labeled the call a pocket call or butt dial. No callback was made. No help was sent. A few hours later, Paulus was found dead.
They're in the business of saving lives. And every single effort on that phone call needs to be making sure that a life is being saved.
The I-Team learned Fredericksburg is the only dispatch center in the D.C. metro area that doesn't call back or send a crew for silent calls. But no longer. After a month-long internal investigation by Fredericksburg police, policy has changed.
We took this incident very seriously, and we did a thorough investigation, and we did a thorough review of the policy, and we want to make sure that something like this does not happen in the future.
Now, if someone calls 911 and nothing is heard, the dispatcher will call back and leave a message. If the caller cannot be reached, an emergency crew will be sent. Every time.
It's unfortunate that my father had to go through this and pass away before it actually changed.
Do you think this new policy could have saved your father's life?
I do. With my father dialing 911, if somebody had responded, I'm 100% certain I'd still have my dad today, or I'd at least be able to say goodbye.
This change in policy at Fredericksburg Dispatch is its first in 7 years. So in addition to this change, Fredericksburg will now review its 911 policy every year to make sure it stays current. Chris Papst,
ABC 7 News.
Fredericksburg City is facing a wrongful death lawsuit. This is over its former so-called butt dial policy. This after a series of 7 on Your Side reports exposed how a man called 911, no help was sent, and he died. Our I-Team government watchdog investigator Chris Papst broke this story earlier this year and has been following it ever since. He joins us now with a new important development. Chris?
Well, when the family of Robert Paulus first contacted 7 on Your Side, they were distraught. Their loved one was dead. They had no idea what happened. They just wanted answers from Fredericksburg City. But now, the family wants something else.
Fredericksburg 911, where's your emergency?
Late in the night on April 23rd, 56-year-old Robert Paulus called 911 from his Fredericksburg apartment.
Hello?
When the dispatcher answered, she heard nothing except this sound and labeled the call a pocket call or butt dial. No callback was made. No help was sent. A few hours later, Paulus was found dead.
Justice in this case is holding government accountable for its mistakes.
Next year, attorney Richard Najette will mark his 50th year of practicing law in Stafford, Virginia. But his plans to retire have just been put on hold.
That case is so egregious, it demands legal representation.
There was one final cry for help, and nobody responded.
Following an extensive I-Team investigation, Fredericksburg changed its policy in August. Now, if someone calls 911 and nothing is heard, the dispatcher will call back and leave a message. If the caller cannot be reached, an emergency crew will be sent every time.
And we want to make sure that something like this does not happen in the future.
And so does Najette. In his court filing, he will seek a yet undetermined amount of monetary damages due to what he calls wrongful death by gross negligence of the city of Fredericksburg. The I-Team reached out to the city's mayor, manager, attorney, and police department for comment. But we were told policy prohibits city officials from commenting on pending litigation.
If it hadn't been for you, this case would have been swept under the rug. If no one does anything about this case, then it'll be just another case where the government screwed up, but no one's held accountable. That's not right.
So what happens next? Well, Najette expects the case to move forward sometime in mid-2017, and of course, 7 on Your Side will keep you updated. Chris Papst, ABC 7 News.